The rain-slicked streets of Busan's old port district gleamed under the sodium glow of street lamps, where the salty tang of the sea mingled with the acrid smoke from nearby fish markets. Inside the dim, bustling interior of Han's Harbour, a modest seafood restaurant tucked between warehouses and shipping cranes, the air hummed with the clatter of chopsticks and low murmurs of late-night diners. Waitress Ji-yeon Kim wiped down a sticky table, her apron stained with soy sauce and fish broth, oblivious to the storm brewing outside, or the one about to erupt within. At 28, Ji-yeon had carved out a fragile routine in this gritty corner of the city. Double shifts to pay off her late mother's medical debts, evenings spent sketching forgotten hanok designs in a cramped studio apartment. Her life was a quiet grind, far from the neon excess of Gangnam or the shadowy dealings whispered about in the docks. But tonight, as thunder rumbled like distant artillery, an unusual party claimed the corner booth, the one reserved for high rollers who tipped in crisp bills and spoke in coded undertones. The group was small but commanding. An elderly woman in a tailored silk hanbok, her silver hair pinned with jade, flanked by two stone-faced men in dark suits. Across from her sat a man in his 40s, broad-shouldered and impeccably dressed, his face a mask of controlled intensity. Kang Min-ho, the Korean Mafia boss, whose name evoked both fear and reluctant respect in Busan's underworld. He oversaw the smuggling routes that snaked through the Yellow Sea, his operations a web of legitimate shipping fronts and illicit cargo, silk, electronics, and whispers of something darker. But family was his anchor, a code etched from losses long past. Never let blood spill innocently, always protect the legacy. Ji-yeon approached with a tray of grilled mackerel and chilled soju, her movements efficient, smile polite but distant. "Your order, ma'am," she said, setting down the plates. The elderly woman, Min-ho's grandmother, though Ji-yeon didn't know it, looked up sharply, her eyes narrowing on Ji-yeon's wrist as she reached for an empty glass. In a flash, the old woman's gnarled hand shot out, grabbing Ji-yeon's slender arm with surprising strength. "This birthmark," the grandmother rasped, her voice cutting through the restaurant's din like a knife through silk. She twisted Ji-yeon's wrist gently but firmly, exposing the faint, crescent-shaped mark just above her pulse point, a irregular swirl of darkened skin, innocuous to most, a family heirloom scar to others. "It belongs to our family." The booth fell silent. Min-ho froze, his chopsticks hovering mid-air, the soju bottle sweating beads onto the lacquered table. His guards shifted subtly, hands inching toward concealed holsters, eyes scanning the room for threats. Ji-yeon yanked back instinctively, heat flooding her cheeks. "Excuse me? Let go, that's not funny." But the grandmother's grip held, her gaze unyielding, as if peering through decades of fog. Min-ho's mind raced. That mark, it was identical to the one his late sister had borne, a genetic echo passed down through their bloodline, hidden from the world, but known to those who guarded the family's secrets. His sister had vanished 25 years ago, kidnapped during a rival clan's raid on their Incheon safe house, her body never recovered. The pain had forged Min-ho's code, loyalty above all, vengeance measured, innocence shielded. Could this waitress, with her unassuming poise and weary eyes, be the niece he'd never known existed? A lost piece of the puzzle that could upend his empire? "Grandmother," Min-ho said quietly, his voice a low command that stilled the table. He leaned forward, studying Ji-yeon's face, the high cheekbones, the subtle tilt of her eyes mirroring his own. "Release her. Now." The old woman complied, but not before murmuring, "The river took her mother, but the blood remembers." Ji-yeon's heart pounded as she backed away, rubbing her wrist. The birthmark had always been a quirk, a story her mother dismissed as just a spot from the old country. But now, under the weight of their stares, it felt like a brand. She retreated to the kitchen, The swing doors flapping behind her, where the sizzle of wax and steam masked her uneven breaths. What kind of game were they playing? Busan's underworld was no myth to her. She'd seen the tattoos peeking from shirt collars, heard the rumors of clans warring over dockside territories, but this, it reeked of something personal, invasive. Outside, the rain intensified, drumming against the tin roof like impatient fingers. Minho excused himself from the table, signaling one of his men, a wiry operative named Tae-woo, to follow at a distance. He stepped into the narrow alley behind the restaurant, lighting a cigarette under the awning. The glow illuminated the faint scar on his jaw, a remnant of that same raid that claimed his sister. "Run her plates," he muttered into his burner phone, voice clipped. "Ji-yeon Kim, born here, mother deceased 5 years ago. Car accident, they said. Dig deeper. Hospital records, old photos, and watch the restaurant. No moves until I say." Tae-woo nodded from the shadows, already tapping coordinates into a secure app on his phone. Surveillance was their edge, discreet cameras on street poles, hacked traffic feeds, whispers from informants in the markets. If Ji-yeon was family, she was a vulnerability and a treasure. Rivals like the Yokohama Syndicate would exploit it, staging diversions or worse to fracture the Kang legacy. Back inside, Ji-yeon forced herself to resume her rounds, but unease coiled in her gut. The booth's occupants lingered, their conversation hushed, punctuated by glances her way. As she cleared a neighboring table, she overheard a snippet. The ledger from the old warehouse. If it's her, the debt transfers. Debt? Her mother's accident had left her drowning in loans. But this felt bigger, like threads pulling from a hidden seam. The night wore on, the restaurant emptying as closing time neared. Ji-yeon untied her apron, her mind replaying the grandmother's words. Curiosity warred with caution. Should she confront them or slip out the back and forget? As she stepped into the alley for a breath of air, headlights pierced the downpour, a black sedan idling at the curb. Not theirs, she thought, but the engine's low growl sent a chill down her spine. Was it coincidence, or the first shadow of something closing in? Minho watched from his booth, the soju untouched. The pieces didn't fit yet, but one thing was clear. This waitress had just stepped into his world, whether she wanted to or not. And in his world, family claims weren't questions, they were commands. The rain had turned the alley into a slick vein of black asphalt, puddles mirroring the erratic flicker of a distant neon sign. Ji-yeon huddled under the restaurant's overhang, her thin jacket doing little against the chill that seeped from the sea. The black sedan's headlights cut through the downpour like accusatory beams, idling just beyond the mouth of the alley. No one emerged, but the engine's rumble felt deliberate, a low, warning hum that matched the unease twisting in her chest. She glanced back toward the kitchen door, half tempted to bolt inside and lock it behind her. But curiosity, or was it the weight of those unpaid bills stacking up at home, held her feet. From the shadows of the booth's window, Minho observed her silhouette, the cigarette's ember glowing faintly in his hand. Tae-woo's text buzzed against his thigh. Initial check. Mother, Lee Soo-min. Died in crash on Coastal Road. No siblings listed. Birth records sealed, partial, adoption angle. Digging hospital logs. Minho crushed the butt under his heel. Sealed records meant leverage or cover-up. In his line of work, family ties weren't coincidences. They were weapons or weaknesses. The Yokohama crew had been probing his shipments lately. Delayed containers at the docks, a burned warehouse in the industrial zone. If Ji-yeon was the lost niece, exposing her could shatter the fragile truce he'd built after his sister's disappearance. He rose smoothly, signaling his grandmother with a subtle nod. The old woman adjusted her hanbok, her eyes sharp as polished obsidian. "Bring her," she murmured. voice laced with the authority of someone who'd survived clan wars and whispered betrayals. Minho crossed the restaurant floor, the wooden planks creaking under his polished shoes, ignoring the curious stares from the remaining staff. He pushed through the back door, the humid kitchen air giving way to the storm's bite. "Ms. Kim," he called, his tone even, almost courteous, as he stepped into the alley. Ji-yeon spun, her back pressing against the damp brick wall, eyes wide but defiant. The sedan's lights dimmed slightly as if on cue, but no doors opened. A word. Inside, out of the rain. She crossed her arms, rain dripping from her dark hair. "I don't think so. Whatever that was about my wrist, it's none of your business. I'm closing up." Her voice held steady, honed from years of deflecting drunken patrons, but her pulse betrayed her, visible at the base of her throat. Minho didn't advance, respecting the space, though his presence filled it like smoke. "My grandmother, she gets impulses from the past. That mark, it's rare, like a family crest hidden in plain sight." He paused, choosing words carefully. The rain pattering on nearby dumpsters like muffled gunfire. "Your mother, Lee Soo-min, right? From Incheon originally." Ji-yeon's breath caught. How did he know that? Her mother's name was on old bills, sure, but not something strangers tossed out in alleys. "What is this, some kind of shakedown? If you want free soju, ask the boss." She edged toward the street, but the sedan's outline loomed, a silent barrier. "Not a shakedown," Minho replied, his voice dropping lower, confidential. "An invitation. Dinner tomorrow, private. We talk, clear this up. No obligations." He pulled a card from his coat, thick stock, embossed with a minimalist wave emblem, no name, just an address in Hyundai's upscale district and a number. "For your safety. Busan's not as safe as it seems these days." Safety. The word hung between them, absurd in the context of a man who radiated controlled menace. But the sedan revved once, then pulled away slowly, tires hissing on wet pavement, leaving her with the card burning in her palm. Ji-yeon watched it go, memorizing the plate, partial, obscured by mud, but enough to note later. She slipped the card into her pocket, not committing, but not discarding it either. Debt collectors had been circling her phone lately, vague threats about old family loans. Was this connected? Her mother's accident, skid marks on a clear night, witnesses who vanished, had always nagged at her. Back inside, the restaurant felt smaller, the air thick with lingering fish smoke and the faint ozone of the storm. Ji-yeon finished wiping counters, her mind replaying the encounter. The grandmother's grip had been firm, not threatening but insistent, like unearthing a buried root. As she locked the front door, her phone vibrated, an unknown number. Drive safe. Eyes on the road. No signature. Her stomach knotted. Had they bugged her? Paranoia, she told herself, but she took the long way home, eyes flicking to the rear view for tails. Minho returned to the booth, where his grandmother sipped tea, her expression unreadable. "She's the one," she said flatly, as if stating the tide's direction. "The river didn't claim her fully. Soo-min hid her to protect the line." He nodded, though doubt lingered. Tae-woo slid into the seat across, voice low. Prelims. Ji-yeon's apartment in Jagalchi, basic security, no cameras. But her mother's crash? Coroner report flagged inconsistencies. Brake fluid tampered, they buried it. Yokohama ties? Possible hit to pressure your father back then? Minho's jaw tightened. The old grudge. His father's expansion into Japanese roots had sparked the raid. His sister's abduction, the price. If Ji-yeon was blood, she carried that debt and the protection it demanded. Escort her tomorrow. Discreet. No scares. He glanced at the window, where rain blurred the world. His code demanded he verify before claiming her, but rivals wouldn't wait. The next evening, Ji-yeon stood before her fogged mirror in the cramped apartment, the Hanok sketches scattered on the bed like forgotten dreams. Curiosity won, laced with the practical. A free meal in Hyundai beat another ramen night, and answers about her mother were rarer than honest tips. She chose a simple black dress, modest, her birthmark covered by a thin bracelet. The address led to a private club atop a cliffside hotel, waves crashing below like applause for the elite. A driver waited curbside, clean-cut, no visible ink, holding the door without a word. The ride was smooth, leather seats cool against her skin, the hum of the engine masking the faint crackle of a radio in the front. "First time here?" the driver asked, eyes on the road. Ji-yeon nodded, peering out at the city lights blurring into coastal darkness. "What's the catch?" "No catch, boss just wants to talk." His tone was neutral, but she caught the subtle earpiece wire glinting under his collar. The club was a sanctuary of polished teak and low lanterns, the air scented with jasmine and grilled eel. Minho waited at a corner table, grandmother absent, his suit jacket draped over the chair. He rose as she approached, gesturing to the seat. "You came. Good." She sat, scanning the room, discreet guards at the bar, a server who moved too purposefully. "Cut the mystery. How do you know my mother's name? And that mark, it's just a birthmark." Minho poured sake, the liquid glinting amber. "Not just. My family. We lost someone. A sister, taken in a dispute. She had the same. Genetics don't lie." He slid a faded photo across the table, a young woman, mid-20s, laughing by a riverbank. The crescent mark visible on her wrist, the resemblance to her mother was uncanny, the eyes a mirror of her own. Ji-yeon's fingers trembled as she touched the edge. "This is... her? My aunt?" The pieces shifted. Her mother's reticence about family, the sealed records, the accident that left her orphaned young, raised in foster shadows before Busan. "Possibly," Minho said, his gaze steady. "Tests would confirm. But if true, you're under our protection, and in our world, that means debts and dangers follow." As thunder rolled from the sea, a waiter approached with menus, but Ji-yeon barely noticed. Outside, through the floor-to-ceiling glass, a shadow flickered in the tree line, a watcher, or the wind. The photo burned in her mind, but so did the question. If this was family, why did it feel like a trap closing? The sake warmed Ji-yeon's throat like liquid fire, but it did little to ease the knot in her chest. The club's ambient hum, soft jazz from hidden speakers, the clink of crystal glasses, the distant crash of waves against the cliffs, felt like a carefully orchestrated veil, hiding the undercurrents swirling beneath. Minho sat across from her, his posture relaxed yet vigilant, the photo of the young woman still face up between them, its edges curling slightly from age and humidity. The woman's smile was bright, unburdened, but the crescent birthmark on her wrist stared back like an accusation. "Her name was Kang Yun-ji," Minho said, his voice low, threading through the murmur of other patrons. "My sister. Disappeared during a raid on our family home in Incheon 25 years ago. Rivals from Yokohama, old grudges over shipping lanes. They took her to send a message. We never found her body, but the pain. It carved rules into us. No innocence touched. Blood protected no matter the cost." Ji-yeon traced the photo's outline with her fingertip, the paper cool and faintly yellowed. The resemblance gnawed at her. The same almond-shaped eyes, the subtle dimple in the chin that her mother had possessed. "And you think my mother, Su-min, was involved? That she hid me?" The words tasted foreign, laced with the impossibility of it all. Her childhood memories were fragments, foster homes after the crash, her mother's hurried stories of starting fresh in Busan, always evading questions about roots. No family photos, no heirlooms, beyond a faded jade pendant she'd worn until it snapped during a shift. Minho nodded once, his dark eyes reflecting the lantern light like polished stone. So-min was Yunji's closest friend. They grew up together in the old neighborhood before the clans pulled us apart. If she survived the raid, escaped with a child, hiding would have been her only play. The Yokohama dogs don't forgive loose ends. He leaned back, signaling the waiter for a platter of sashimi, the knife's flash on raw tuna, a stark reminder of precision in his world. Your records show adoption papers filed quietly, but the hospital logs, they're incomplete. Someone scrubbed them. That's not accident, that's cover. The fish arrived, arranged in neat crimson rows, steam rising faintly from ginger slices. Ji-yeon picked at a piece, the salty tang sharp on her tongue, but her appetite had fled. Outside the glass wall, the storm had eased to a persistent drizzle, blurring the tree line where she'd glimpsed that flicker earlier. Was it a guard, or paranoia creeping in, like the fog off the sea? "This protection you mention," she said, setting down her chopsticks with a deliberate clack. "It sounds more like a cage. I have a life. Debts, yes, but my own choices. If I'm family, fine, but I don't owe you anything." Minho's expression softened fractionally, a rare crack in the facade revealing the man beneath the boss. "No cage, but in our world, family isn't optional. It's armor. Your mother's crash. Taewoo pulled the report this afternoon. Brake lines cut, not worn. Witnesses recanted under pressure. Yokohama's signature. They tie off threads." He slid another item across the table, a slim folder unmarked, containing photocopied manifests from old shipping logs. "See here, a vessel out of Incheon, same night as the raid. Passenger manifest lists S. Lee, an infant female, disembarked in Busan. Coincidence?" Ji-yeon's hand shook as she flipped through the pages, the ink smudged but legible. The dates aligned perfectly with her hazy earliest memory. A cramped ferry cabin, her mother's whispers about new beginnings, the sting of salt water on her skin. "This proves nothing," she whispered, though doubt laced her voice. "It could be anyone." But the pull was there, a magnetic tug toward the unknown, clashing with the fierce independence she'd built brick by brick, nights sketching Hanok restorations, dreaming of a design firm that didn't reek of fish guts. A soft vibration hummed from Minho's pocket, and he glanced at his phone, his jaw tightening imperceptibly. "It proves enough to watch your back." He pocketed the device, but not before Ji-yeon caught the screen's glow. A map pin on her apartment building, time-stamped minutes ago. Surveillance. Her skin prickled, the club's warmth turning cloying. "How many eyes do you have on me already?" "Enough to keep you breathing," he replied evenly, though a shadow crossed his features, possessiveness warring with restraint, the code that bound him. "But not enough, apparently. Taewoo just flagged a tail on your route here. Black van, partial plate from Yokohama's fleet. They know you're talking to me." The words landed like a cold wave. Ji-yeon's gaze darted to the entrance, where the driver who'd brought her lounged by the bar, earpiece now visible, hand resting near his hip. The room's elegance soured, every shadow a potential threat. The couple at the next table murmuring too intently, the waiter who lingered a beat too long, refilling water. "This dinner was bait," she accused, rising abruptly, the chair scraping against the teak floor. "You dragged me into your mess." Minho stood as well, his height blocking the light, but he didn't touch her. "No bait, opportunity. Come with us tonight, safe house in the hills. One night, DNA test. Then you walk if you want." His voice held an undercurrent of urgency, the first real fracture in his composure. Outside, tires hissed on wet pavement. Headlights swept the lot, not the van, but close enough to spike her pulse. She hesitated. The folder clutched to her chest like a shield, the birthmark itching under her bracelet. Autonomy screamed to run to her dingy apartment, her sketches, her fragile freedom, but the photo's eyes pleaded otherwise, and the distant growl of engines whispered of costs unpaid. "One night," she conceded finally, voice tight, "but if this is a lie, you'll regret it." Minho nodded, gesturing to the driver. As they exited into the drizzle, the sea air thick with brine and exhaust, a figure melted from the tree line, brief, hooded, phone raised like a weapon. Flash of a camera or a signal. The driver accelerated smoothly onto the coastal road, the club's lights fading in the rear view, but Ji-yeon couldn't shake the sensation of eyes boring into the tinted glass. What had her mother truly hidden, and who was coming to collect? If you're enjoying this story so far, tell us in the comments where in the world you're watching from. The coastal road twisted like a serpent under the drizzle, headlights carving fleeting paths through the mist that rolled in from the yellow sea. Ji-yeon gripped the leather armrest in the sedan's back seat. The folder from Minho still clutched in her lap, its edges damp from the club's humidity. The driver, now identified by a quick glance as June, kept the speed steady at 60, but his eyes flicked repeatedly to the rearview, the faint crackle of his earpiece betraying ongoing chatter. Minho sat beside her, silent, his phone screen dimmed but active, thumbs scrolling through encrypted messages. The air inside carried the faint scent of wet wool from their coats and the underlying tang of the sea, seeping through the vents like an uninvited guest. "Why the hills?" Ji-yeon asked, breaking the tension, her voice sharper than intended. The safe house sounded like a euphemism for lockdown, a far cry from her cluttered apartment where the only security was a finicky deadbolt. Minho didn't look up from his phone. Old property, off-grid, solar backups, no utility ties to trace. Yokohama's been hacking municipal grids for months. Blackouts are their calling card. He pocketed the device, meeting her gaze. The passing street lamps cast intermittent shadows across his face, highlighting the scar on his jaw, a reminder of vulnerabilities past. "One night, swab, results by morning, via private lab. Then you decide." She nodded curtly, but doubt gnawed at her. The photo of Yoon-ji burned in her mind, a spectral twin to her mother's faded image from a single locket. If true, this family came with chains, debts from raids she never witnessed, loyalties she hadn't earned. Her independence, hard-won through endless shifts at Hans Harbor, felt like sand slipping through fingers. Outside, the city lights thinned, giving way to rugged cliffs where waves pounded unseen rocks below, their roar muffled by the car's insulated hum. June's voice cut in from the front, low and urgent. "Boss, we've got company. Black van, 2 cars back. Picked it up after the club turn-off. Plate's a ghost. But the mods scream Yokohama. Tinted mods. Low-profile tires for tailing." Minho's posture shifted, a coiled spring. "Shake it. Next junction, double back through the service road." He turned to Ji-yeon, his tone measured. "Stay low, no heroics." The sedan surged forward, engine growling as June veered onto a narrower lane, flanked by eucalyptus groves, their leaves whispering in the wind like conspirators. Ji-yeon's heart hammered against her ribs, the folder sliding to the floor with a soft thud. She peered over the seat, catching a glimpse of the van's sleek outline in the side mirror, headlights bobbing like pursuing eyes. "This is insane," she muttered. "I should have walked away." "You still can after," Minho replied, but his hand rested near his coat pocket, where the outline of a concealed piece pressed against the fabric. His code forbade drawing first, but survival bent rules. The van accelerated, closing the gap, its high beams flashing once, a signal or a threat. Tires screeched as June executed the double back, gravel spraying from the service road's edge. The cliffs loomed closer now, sodium security lights from a distant warehouse, flickering like faulty stars. Ji-yeon's mind raced to the investigative scraps she'd overheard at the restaurant. Ledgers, manifests, old grievances. If Yokohama wanted her as leverage, it tied back to that Incheon raid, the one that supposedly orphaned her into hiding. Her mother's crash, the tampered brakes, threads pulling tighter. The van mirrored their move, but June was sharper, cutting through a chain-link gate marked for maintenance vehicles only. The sedan jolted over rutted dirt, suspension groaning as the safe house came into view. A low-slung villa nestled in the hillside, its walls camouflaged by terraced vines and razor wire disguised as trellises. Backup lights hummed from solar panels, casting a pale glow over the gravel drive. Two guards emerged from the shadows, silhouettes in black tactical gear, rifles slung low, waving them in with hand signals. As the car skidded to a halt, Min-ho exited first, pulling Ji-yeon out with a firm but gentle grip on her elbow. Inside, now. The air hit her like a slap. Briny wind laced with pine resin and the faint, metallic tang of gun oil from the guards. Footsteps crunched behind. The van had broken off, but Tae-woo appeared from a side path, breath ragged, a compact drone controller in hand. "Lost them in the grove," Tae-woo reported, wiping rain from his brow. "But they jammed the signal. Our perimeter cams glitched for a minute. Someone's got a scanner." He nodded to Ji-yeon. "Professional detachment masking curiosity. Lab kits ready. Swabs in the den." The villa's interior was a stark contrast to the club's opulence. Exposed concrete floors, reinforced doors humming with electronic locks, the air cool and faintly musty from dehumidifiers. A wall of monitors displayed feeds, docs in real time, her apartment building's street cam, even a hacked port authority manifest scrolling cargo lists. Ji-yeon paused, eyes widening at one screen. A grainy still from the restaurant alley, time-stamped last night, showing her with the sedan. Surveillance, woven into the city's fabric like invisible veins. Min-ho led her to a side room, sparse with a leather couch and a medical station on a steel cart. Swabs, vials, a portable analyzer humming softly. His grandmother waited there, perched on a stool, a shawl draped over her shoulders, eyes gleaming with quiet triumph. "Sit, child," she said, her voice a rasp of aged silk. "The blood will speak." Ji-yeon complied, rolling up her sleeve as Tae-woo handled the swab, quick, clinical, the cotton tip cool against her inner cheek. The process took seconds, but the weight loomed like the storm outside. Min-ho paced, phone to his ear, murmuring orders. "Double the dock watches. Check the old warehouse ledger. Yoonji's last known contacts. If Yokohama's moving, it's for the Incheon routes." The grandmother reached out, not grabbing this time, but tracing the air near Ji-yeon's wrist. "Your mother was fierce. Saved Yoonji once. From a fire in the family mill. Hid the scar with stories, but scars remember." Her words carried the weight of legacy, a code passed down. Protect the line, even if it meant shadows and sacrifices. The analyzer beeped, results scrolling on a tablet. Min-ho snatched it, scanning the genetic match. His breath caught a 99, 8% familial link, irrefutable. "It's you," he said, voice thick with something raw. Relief, possession, the burden of blood reclaimed. Niece, family. Ji-yeon's world tilted. Proof, cold and digital, shattered her solitude. But joy? No, only the push-pull of autonomy clashing with this sudden anchor. "And now? You own me?" "No," Min-ho said firmly, pocketing the tablet. "We protect you. But the cost." A guard burst in then, urgent. "Boss, perimeter breach, power flicker in the east wing, generators kicking in, but someone's cut the fence line." Alarms wailed faintly, the monitors glitching to static. Outside, the wind howled, but this was no natural storm. Human hands at work, rivals infiltrating under cover of night. Min-ho's eyes met Ji-yeon's, the revelation fresh, the danger immediate. Who had sold the safe house coordinates, and what price would they pay to drag her back into the dark? The safe house's alarms pierced the night like shattered glass, a shrill cascade echoing off the concrete walls and drowning out the wind's howl outside. Red emergency lights pulsed along the corridors, casting erratic shadows that danced like intruders already inside. Ji-yeon froze in the den, the metallic tang of the swab still lingering on her tongue, the tablet's confirmation glowing accusingly on the steel cart. Family. The word echoed hollowly in her mind, overshadowed by the chaos erupting around her. Minho's face hardened into a mask of calculated fury, his hand instinctively guiding her toward the interior door as Tae-woo barked coordinates into his radio. "East wing, seal it," Minho commanded, his voice cutting through the din like a blade. He turned to the grandmother, who had risen unsteadily, her shawl slipping to reveal the frail strength in her frame. "Stay with her. Armories stocked, non-lethals only." His code held firm even now, no innocents harmed, no blood spilled unless survival demanded it. But the breach gnawed at him. How? The safe house's location was buried in verbal handoffs, no digital trails, guarded by rotations that shifted like tides. Ji-yeon pulled away from his touch, adrenaline surging through her veins, hot and disorienting. The air grew thick with the ozone scent of flickering electronics, the hum of the backup generator rumbling like a beast awakening in the basement. "This is what protection looks like?" she snapped, her voice laced with accusation as she snatched the folder from the floor where it had fallen during the van chase. Papers rustled, manifests, reports, clues to a life she hadn't asked for. Autonomy clashed against the pull of this revelation. She was no longer just a waitress dodging debts, but a pawn in a legacy of shadows. Tae-woo hustled them down a narrow hallway, boots thudding on the cold floor, his compact sidearm drawn but low. Generators holding, but the fence cut was clean. Wire snips, no explosives. Thermal scan shows 3 heat signatures approaching from the tree line. Not amateurs. He tapped his earpiece, relaying to the perimeter guards. "Flank and contain. No shots fired." The monitors in the central room flickered back to life partially. One feed capturing a hooded figure slipping through the razor wire, tools glinting under the sodium floodlights. Another screen looped traffic cams from the coastal road, the black van, abandoned now, its doors ajar like a discarded shell. Minho paused at a reinforced junction, punching an access code into a keypad that beeped affirmatively, sliding the door shut behind them. The safe room was a bunker of sorts, steel-lined, with a single vent humming filtered air, shelves lined with encrypted radios, medical kits and ledgers bound in leather. He pulled a burner phone from a hidden drawer, dialing a secure line. "June, status on the convoy? We need extraction in 10. His eyes met Ji-yeon's, a flicker of something protective, almost tender, warring with the boss's steel resolve. "You're in this now, but we get you out clean." The grandmother sank onto a bench, her breathing labored, but her gaze fixed on Ji-yeon with unyielding certainty. The blood called them here. They sensed the return. She extended a trembling hand, not to grab, but to offer a small jade amulet from her pocket, the same faded pendant Ji-yeon remembered from her mother's neck, or so it seemed in the dim light. "Soo-min left this for you, hidden in the river's bend after the raid. She rowed you out on a skiff, under storm cover." Yokohama watched the docks that night. Ji-yeon's fingers closed around the cool stone, its carvings worn smooth by time and tide. Sensory memory flooded her, the rock of waves, her mother's hushed songs in a language half forgotten. But trust fractured under pressure. Was this genuine heirloom or bait to bind her? Outside, muffled shouts echoed, guards intercepting, the crackle of tasers discharging like distant fireworks. No gunfire, Minho's rule held, but the cost mounted in bruises and narrow escapes. Tae-woo hunched over a laptop, fingers flying across keys, pulling feeds from hacked port security. "Got a hit," Shipping manifest from Yokohama's front, dated yesterday. Special cargo, rerouted to Busan docks. Timestamp matches our dinner. Someone leaked the club meet. His face paled as he cross-referenced. An internal log from their own network, a subtle ping on Minho's phone trace. Boss? It's internal. Guard rotation, Sung-Ho's shift. He accessed the Hills cords last week. Behavioral tell, called in sick tonight, burner traced to a payphone near the industrial zone. Betrayal, Minho's fist clenched, knuckles whitening, the scar on his jaw twitching. Sung-Ho, a mid-level enforcer who'd lost his brother to a Yokohama ambush years back. Loyalty, bought with grief, now sold for what? A rival payoff? The human fracture cut deep, ambition eroding the code, suspicion poisoning bonds. Contain him later, priority, extraction. He activated a secondary alarm, the floor vibrating as hidden panels shifted, revealing a tunnel access beneath the villa, escape route carved into the hillside, leading to a concealed garage with armored SUVs. Ji-yeon followed as they descended, the air turning damp and earthy, laced with the musty scent of undisturbed stone. Flashlights cut through the gloom, beams bouncing off reinforced concrete walls etched with emergency markers. The grandmother leaned on her arm, a fragile weight that anchored Ji-yeon's resolve. Fear versus found family, the push-pull intensified with every step, her sketches and solitary life feeling worlds away, replaced by this web of logistics and lies. They emerged into the garage, engine roars already idling. June at the wheel of a black Escalade, wipers slashing rain from the windshield. Minho bundled them in, sliding into the passenger seat as Tae-woo took rear guard, scanning the tree line through night vision goggles. Tires spun on gravel as they peeled out, the safe house receding in the mirrors, its lights winking out one by one under deliberate sabotage. But as they merged onto a back road toward the city, Tae-woo's radio crackled. "Boss, intercepted message on Sung-Ho's line. They're not after her, they want the ledger. The old Incheon one, Yoon-ji's contacts, if it's in the villa." Minho's eyes narrowed, the pieces aligning with brutal clarity. The ledger, hidden in the den's false panel, held roots, names, the unfinished vengeance from the raid. Yokohama wasn't just probing. They were erasing loose ends, with Ji-yeon as the spark. The SUV hurtled through the night, cliffs blurring past, but the question lingered like exhaust in the air. If the betrayer had the cords, what else had he sold? And would the convoy reach the docks before the fire they surely planned consumed the truth? The SUV barreled down the serpentine back road, its tires humming over cracked asphalt slick with residual rain, the cliffs on one side dropping sharply into the churning sea below. Ji-yeon pressed against the leather seat, the jade amulet clutched in her fist like a talisman against the absurdity of it all. The engine's growl drowned out the wind whipping through the pines, but not the frantic pulse in her ears or the acrid scent of adrenaline-soaked air inside the vehicle. Minho's profile was etched in the dashboard glow, his jaw set like granite, eyes scanning the side mirrors for phantoms in the dark. June swerved around a pothole, the suspension groaning in protest as Tae-woo's radio spat static-laced updates. No visual on tails yet, but the van's plate pinged a fake registry, tied to a Yokohama shell company in Osaka. They're looping the coastal cams. We bought 10 minutes tops. He hunched over his tablet, fingers blurring across the screen, pulling encrypted logs from the safe house's server before the sabotage fully hit. The betrayal stung like salt in a wound. Sung-Ho, who'd shared drinks after shifts, his loyalty forged in shared losses, now a turncoat for scraps. Minho twisted in his seat, his coat rustling softly, the concealed holster a subtle bulge at his side. "The ledger, Yoon-ji's. What's the access history?" His voice was a controlled rumble, laced with the raw edge of fury restrained by code. No rash moves, vengeance waited for proof, but protection came first. Ji-yon's revelation hung between them, a fragile bridge over the chasm of her doubts. She met his gaze briefly, the birthmark on her wrist itching under the bracelet, a symbol of blood ties she hadn't chosen, pulling her from the quiet grind of waitressing into this vortex of shadows and debts. Tae-woo scrolled, the tablet's light casting blue hollows on his face. Last pull. Sung-ho, 48 hours ago, under routine audit, but cross-checked the timestamps. He was in the East Wing during the fence cut. Behavioral slip. His phone geolock pings a meet at the old fish market warehouse 0200 hours. Burner, but the signal bounced off a Yokohama relay tower. A map overlay flickered up, red dots marking the betrayal's trail. A discrete ledger entry altered, access codes shared via encrypted app, human error, the weakest link. Grief twisted into greed, a brother's death leveraged for a rival's payout. Ji-yon's stomach twisted, the folder's manifests crinkling in her lap as the SUV hit a straightaway, acceleration pressing her back. So this is the family code? Betrayals and chases? Her words cut sharp, autonomy flaring against the possessive undercurrent in Minho's glances, the way he positioned himself as shield, yet claimed her place in his world without asking. The grandmother, wedged beside her, patted her knee with a gnarled hand, the touch grounding amid the chaos. Codes break men, child, but blood mends. The road narrowed, flanked by derelict warehouses looming like forgotten sentinels, their corrugated roofs rattling in the gusts. Sodium lights buzzed overhead, illuminating puddles that mirrored the stars, or were those distant headlights. Jun cursed under his breath, downshifting as a false alarm blared from the dash, radar detector spiking. Roadblock ahead, construction signs but no crews, staged. Yokohama's playbook, funnel and flush. Minho nodded, unflinching. Through it. Jun, call the secondary convoy. Doc's rendezvous, full escort. He turned to Ji-yon, his voice softening just a fraction, the epic weight of legacy in his eyes. This isn't your fight, but it's ours now. The ledger holds Yunji's last roots, smuggling paths that could bury Yokohama if we reclaim it. They want it to rewrite history, erase the raid's debts. Possessiveness edged his tone, a mafia boss's instinct to fold her into the fold, but tempered by the internal rule. No innocence coerced, only offered sanctuary. The SUV plunged toward the barricade, orange cones and a sawhorse blocking the lane, shadows shifting behind stacked crates. Tae-woo's goggles whirred, thermal picking up two figures, hooded, armed with suppressed rifles, positions textbook for an ambush. Hostiles, 11 o'clock, non-lethal window closing. The air thickened with tension, the sea's brine mixing with the sharp tang of exhaust as June floored it, the barricade splintering under the reinforced bumper with a metallic screech. Gunfire chattered, silenced pops, not thunder, bullets pinging off the armored undercarriage like hail on tin. Ji-yon ducked, heart slamming, the grandmother's amulet digging into her palm. The SUV fishtailed through the debris, shards of wood and plastic skittering across the road, but one tire caught a spike strip hidden in the gravel, shredding with the explosive hiss. June wrestled the wheel, veering into a side alley between warehouses, the walls closing in like a vice. "Convoy ETA 5!" Tae-woo shouted, returning fire through the rear window, a flashbang grenade arcing back, blooming in a disorienting burst that lit the mirrors white. The pursuers faltered, but not stopped. Engines roared behind, closing the gap. Minho pulled a compact pistol, chambering around with practiced calm, his code bending under pressure. Defend the line, even if it meant crossing into the grey. They burst onto the dockside, the yellow sea sprawling dark and endless. Cranes silhouetted against the horizon like iron guardians. Container stacks loomed, their shadows pooling deep, the air heavy with diesel fumes and rotting kelp. June killed the lights, weaving into the maze as the radio crackled. "Escort inbound, 3 minutes. But Sung Ho's signal just lit up the warehouse grid. He's inside, with backup. Ji-yeon's mind reeled, piecing the investigative thread. The ledger's theft wasn't random. It was the key to unraveling the raid's full truth: Yunji's fate, her mother's escape, the debts that bound them. But as the SUV screeched to a halt behind a shipping container, distant floodlights sweeping the piers like searchlights, the human cost crystallized. Loyalty tested, suspicion festering, Sung Ho's turncoat move exposed a rot in the empire, and her place in it teetered on the edge. Min-ho's hand brushed hers, a silent pledge amid the peril, but the question burned. Would the convoy arrive before the warehouse erupted in flames, ledger and all? If this tale already has you hooked, hit the like button. It helps us bring more hidden stories to light. The docks thrummed with the restless pulse of the Yellow Sea, waves slapping against rusted pilings like impatient fists, the air thick with the briny rot of seaweed and the oily bite of diesel from idling cranes. The SUV crouched behind a towering stack of containers, its engine ticking cool in the shadows, the deflated tire leaving a rubbery stench that mingled with the fog rolling in from the water. Ji-yeon peered through the tinted rear window, her breath fogging the glass, the jade amulet still warm in her palm, a tether to a mother she'd barely known, now weaponized in this nightmare. The warehouse loomed ahead, a hulking silhouette of corrugated steel and sodium lights buzzing erratically, its loading bays yawning like open wounds. Min-ho crouched low beside the vehicle, his coat blending into the gloom. Burner phone pressed to his ear as he murmured coordinates to the incoming convoy. Flank the East Pier, silent approach, ledger's priority, but extraction first. His voice carried the strain of restraint, the code that demanded measured responses now fraying at the edges. Betrayal from Sung Ho hit like a gut punch. The man had been family in all but blood. His grief over a lost brother, a shared scar that should have bound them tighter. Instead, it had cracked, human ambition prying open the fissure for Yokohama's gold. Tae-woo worked his tablet furiously, the screen's glow illuminating his tense features, fingers tracing signal pings like a surgeon mapping veins. Sung Ho's inside. Thermal shows him in the upper office, 2 heat signatures with him. Warehouse manifest hacked. He's pulling the old Incheon files digitally, but the physical ledger's in the sub-basement vault. Access codes compromised. His print was on file for emergencies. A soft beep sounded. Tae-woo zoomed in on a grainy feed from a hidden dock cam, capturing Sung Ho's silhouette rummaging through cabinets, a duffel at his feet. Motive log. Payments traced to a Yokohama shell. 3 transfers, escalating, not just money, grudge play. He blames you for his brother's hit, boss. Thinks the raid's debts skipped him. Min-ho's jaw clenched, the scar on his face pulling tight under the flickering lights. Grudges, blind men. We end this quiet. Retrieve, contain. But his eyes flicked to Ji-yeon. A possessive glint underscoring the protectiveness, the Mafia instinct to claim and shield clashing with her evident recoil. She met his stare, independence flaring hot in her chest. The waitress who'd sketched dreams in solitude now entangled in this web, her autonomy a luxury eroding with every revelation. I'm not sitting this out, she said, voice low but edged. If that ledger has my mother's truth, Yunji's escape, the raid, I'm seeing it through, not hiding like some fragile heir. The grandmother nodded from her seat, her frail form unbowed, eyes sharp in the dim interior. Blood earns its keep. Min-ho hesitated, the push-pull evident in his posture, legacy demanding he fold her in, but ethics whispering of choice. Stay close, no risks. He signaled Tae-woo, and they moved as a unit, slipping from the SUV into the maze of containers, footsteps muffled on the damp concrete. The fog thickened, carrying the distant hum of security radios, crackling with false alarms. Staged diversions, no doubt, to draw patrols away. They hugged the warehouse's perimeter, the structure's walls vibrating with the low groan of conveyor belts inside. Automated ghosts sorting cargo through the night. A side door hung ajar, its lock jimmied with precision. Sung Ho's work or an accomplice's? Minho eased it open, the hinges whispering protest, releasing a rush of stale air laced with dust and printer ink. Inside, the vast space echoed with drips from a leaky roof, pallets of electronics and silk crates stacked like tombstones under harsh fluorescence. Tae-woo's goggles whirred softly, scanning for motion. Clear for now, but the upper catwalks creaked faintly, shadows shifting like watchers. Ji-yeon followed, her simple dress swapped for a spare jacket from the SUV, the fabric rough against her skin, heart pounding in rhythm with the waves outside. Sensory overload gripped her. The metallic tang of rust, the faint ozone from jammed electronics nearby, the weight of the amulet pulling at her like unresolved memory. They descended a grated staircase to the sub-basement, each step echoing too loudly, the air growing cooler, damper, laced with the musty scent of aged paper and forgotten shipments. The vault door loomed, a heavy steel slab with a biometric panel, its green light pulsing mockingly. Tae-woo bypassed the code with a portable jammer, the device humming as it spoofed Sung Ho's print, but a warning chime echoed, alert triggered. 30 seconds till lockdown, he hissed. Minho wrenched the door open, revealing a narrow room lined with filing cabinets and a central pedestal where the ledger sat, bound in cracked leather, its pages yellowed with age. Ji-yeon lunged for it, fingers trembling as she flipped to the marked section. Handwritten entries from the raid night, Eunji's last sighting, rowed to safety by Sumin on a smuggling skiff, infant in arms. She survived. Hid us in Busan to break the cycle, Ji-yeon whispered, tracing her mother's name, the ink faded but the truth sharp. Partial discovery hit like a wave, not just family, but a deliberate severance from the violence, debts left unpaid to protect the line. But alarms wailed suddenly, red strobes bathing the vault in bloody light. Footsteps thundered above, Sung Ho's voice barking orders in clipped Korean, laced with Yokohama accents. "Seal the exits! The girl's the key! Take her alive!" Minho shoved the ledger into Ji-yeon's hands, drawing his pistol low. "Back way! Tunnels to the pier!" They bolted, the basement corridors twisting like veins under the warehouse, emergency lights flickering as a blackout rippled through. Deliberate power cut at a junction box, plunging them into near darkness, save for Tae-woo's flashlight beam bouncing off graffiti-scarred walls. A jammed gate blocked the tunnel exit, bars bent from prior sabotage, the sea's roar louder now, vibrating through the concrete. Tae-woo rammed it with his shoulder, metal groaning, but gunfire echoed from the main floor, pops muffled by crates, guards clashing in the chaos above. Human conflict boiled, Minho's code versus the rival's ruthlessness, loyalty fracturing under Sung Ho's turn. "He's selling us out for routes he can't hold," Minho growled, covering the rear as they squeezed through the gate, emerging onto a submerged pier where water lapped at their ankles. Cold and insistent, the convoy's lights pierced the fog finally, 3 armored vans screeching to a halt, doors flying open to disgorge reinforcements. But Sung Ho burst from a side hatch then, duffels slung over his shoulder, eyes wild in the floodlights, a rival enforcer at his flank. "It's over, boss. The ledger's digitized, sent. Yokohama ends the Kang debt tonight." Betrayal hung raw. His face twisted by years of festering suspicion, the code he'd sworn shattered for a hollow vengeance. Minho raised his weapon but held fire, voice steady. "Stand down. Family doesn't end in blood." Ji-yeon clutched the physical ledger, its weight a symbol of truths reclaimed. But the standoff teetered, reinforcements closing in, the environment turning hazardous with the rising tide flooding the pier, exits narrowing. Who would break first, and at what cost to the fragile trust they'd just forged? The pier's submerged edge groaned under the rising tide, black water swirling around rusted bollards and lapping at the concrete like hungry tongues, the yellow sea's chill seeping through Ji-yon's shoes. Floodlights from the arriving convoy sliced through the fog, bathing the scene in stark white, turning the standoff into a frozen tableau. Sung-ho frozen mid-stride, duffel clutched like a lifeline, his accomplice's rifle half raised, eyes darting between the reinforcements spilling from the vans, 6 men in tactical vests, moving with disciplined precision. The air crackled with tension, thick with salt spray and the acrid tang of gunpowder residue from the warehouse scuffle above. The distant hum of cranes a mocking underscore to the chaos. Min-ho held his position at the tunnel's mouth, pistol steady but low, the barrel pointed skyward in a deliberate show of restraint, his code etched deeper than instinct, even as betrayal's sting burned hot. "Sung-ho!" he called, voice carrying over the wave's crash, steady as the cliffs behind them. "The ledger's ours. Drop the bag. Yokohama's roots end here. No more debts on our blood." His eyes flicked to Ji-yon, ledger tucked under her arm, the grandmother steadying herself against a piling, her breath ragged but gaze unyielding. Possessiveness warred in him, the urge to pull her behind the line clashing with respect for the fire she'd shown in the vault, claiming her piece of the truth. Sung-ho's face twisted, shadows carving deep lines from years of unspoken grudges, the warehouse lights glinting off sweat on his brow. "Your code, it buried my brother, Inchin's fallout, your father's greed. Yokohama offered justice, not scraps." He shifted the duffel, a faint beep emanating from it, digital drive syncing, the stolen files uploading via a hidden cellular jammer in the warehouse grid. Human fracture laid bare, loyalty eroded by suspicion, ambition's poison turning ally to foe. His accomplice tensed, finger hovering on the trigger, but the convoy's leader, June, barking orders, flanked them silently, tasers humming to life. Ji-yon stepped forward, water eddying around her ankles, the ledger's weight a grounding force amid the peril. "It's over," she said, her voice cutting through the din, honed from years of diffusing bar fights, but laced now with the raw edge of reclaimed history. The pages inside confirmed it all. Sumin's desperate row across the bay, Yunji's whispered survival, wounded but hidden, handed off to allies before vanishing into protective obscurity. No body, no death, a deliberate ghosting to sever the cycle of raids and reprisals. The bloodline breaks if you pull that trigger. We're not your enemies. The accomplice lunged, a blur of motion, rifle swinging toward the convoy, but Tae-woo's flashbang arced from the shadows, detonating with a deafening crack and blinding strobe. Sung-ho staggered, duffel splashing into the shallows as June's team closed in, zip ties snapping like final judgments. No shots fired. Min-ho's rule held, but the cost rippled outward. A stray bullet from the scuffle above, echo from the warehouse, grazed Min-ho's shoulder as he shoved Ji-yon clear, tearing fabric and drawing a sharp hiss of pain, blood blooming dark against his coat. He slumped against a crate, hand clamping the wound, face paling but eyes fierce. "Go, convoy's clear path." Extraction blurred into frenzy. Reinforcements hauling Sung-ho aboard the lead van, his curses muffled as the tide surged higher, jamming the pier's access ladder with debris. Tae-woo rigged a quick jammer on the duffel, halting the upload midstream. Yokohama's servers left with fragments, enough to expose their probe, but not the full ledger's secrets. The grandmother was lifted into the trailing SUV, her amulet pressed into Ji-yon's hand as a silent vow. Min-ho refused aid until they were wheels up, the convoy peeling out in a synchronized roar, weaving through dockside barriers toward a private clinic in the hills, neutral ground, off the grid. As the adrenaline ebbed, The vehicles humming along the coastal escape route, Ji-yeon knelt beside Min-ho in the dim interior, the antiseptic kit's sharp smell cutting through the blood's copper tang. She pressed gauze to his shoulder, hands steady despite the tremor in her chest, triage born of restaurant mishaps, now elevated to survival's edge. "You didn't have to take that hit," she murmured. The ledger open on her lap, its pages a map of sacrifices, Yoon-ji's faked death, Soo-min's isolation, debts paid in silence to shield the innocent. He caught her wrist gently, thumb brushing the birthmark, a claim turned caress, possessiveness yielding to trust earned in fire. Family's not taken, it's chosen. The threat was real, Yokohama's organized, feeding on our cracks. But victory's the line we hold. His voice roughened by pain, but the revelation settled. Sung-ho's capture would purge the rot, exposure forcing a reckoning with internal betrayals. The empire leaner, but unbreakable. The true treasure gleamed in the quiet aftermath, protection forged in shared peril, trust blooming from suspicion, a found family where autonomy intertwined with legacy. Hours later, in the clinic's sterile hush, beeps of monitors syncing with the distant sea's rhythm, Min-ho rested, stitched and bandaged, the wound a badge of restraint over rage. Ji-yeon sat by the window, sketches pulled from her bag, Hanok lines now edged with protective motifs, waves as barriers, crescents as anchors. The grandmother dozed nearby, her presence a bridge to memories unearthed. The adventure's scars outlasted the spoils, routes secured, rivals checked, but loyalty's quiet fire, the memory of hands joined in the dark, and the transformation from stranger to kin proved the enduring power. No easy throne, just a code renewed, choices honored, bloodlines mended not by force, but by will. Subscribe to our channel for more incredible tales of loyalty, danger, and found family. See you in the next story.